Welcome, everyone. If you're here, know that this space is a safe one. A place where you can lay down the weight you've been carrying, if only for a little while. You don't have to explain yourself or hold back your emotions here. You're among people who understand the battles you faced, the ones you fought in silence. It's okay to feel everything, to be vulnerable, to let those unspoken thoughts surface. Together, we're going to dig deep into the truth of what it feels like to be left behind, forgotten by the very people you once trusted. Let's take this journey together, because even though the world can be cold, there's a light that shines within you, one they never saw coming. You are not alone anymore, and today, we're going to remind you just how powerful your story truly is. Have you ever felt like you were drowning, right in front of people who claim to care about you, and they just did nothing? The people you once leaned on, the ones who promised they'd always be there. Where did they go when you needed them most? They watched you struggle, maybe even offered a few empty words of support. But when it came down to it, they turned their backs. They left you alone with your pain, left you wondering why they couldn't see the worth in you that you always saw in them. How many times have you reached out, hoping for a text back, hoping that someone would notice how quiet you've become? Did they notice when you started pulling away, when your phone stopped lighting up with messages? Or was your absence just as invisible as your presence had become? Sometimes the hardest truth to swallow is realizing that the people you once held so close never really saw you at all. Maybe they used you for what you could give them, your time, your energy, your love. And once they had drained you of everything, they simply moved on. But here's the thing, it's not about them anymore. It's about you. Have you asked yourself lately why their opinions, their approval, mattered so much? Why you gave so much of yourself hoping they would stay? What if the truth is that their leaving wasn't a reflection of your worth, but a sign of their inability to see it? You see, people leave when they don't understand the value in front of them. And maybe that's why you were left behind. But look at you now. You survived, even when you thought you wouldn't. Their absence hurt, but it didn't destroy you. It woke something inside you. It made you realize your strength, your resilience. And today, we're going to talk about how that experience, as painful as it was, set you on the path to become who you are now, the one who's not drowning anymore. The tables have turned, haven't they? For so long, they thought you'd stay down. They thought the pain they left you in would be enough to break you. But here you are, rising, thriving, and it's a sight they never expected to see. Now they can't believe it. They don't know how to react. The same people who watched you drown are the ones now watching you soar, and it's eating them alive. Oh, they smile when they see you now, but you can see right through it, can't you? Those smiles are as fake as the love they once pretended to have for you. The same people who turned their backs on you are now reaching out, hoping to stand in your light because they know they were wrong. They see your strength now, the power God has given you, and it scares them. They want to pretend like nothing ever happened, as if the betrayal, the abandonment, the heartache you endured can just be swept under the rug with a hug or a few words of so-called support. But you've grown wiser, you've grown stronger. You don't need their fake support anymore. The tables have turned because you realized something they never did. You were never alone. When they walked away, God stepped in. He took the pain, the heartbreak, and turned it into strength. Every tear you cried became a lesson. Every sleepless night a reminder that your worth comes from Him, not from the opinions or approval of people who didn't see your value. And now, they're the ones left questioning their choices. They thought they'd never need you again, that you were just a stepping stone on their path to something better. But here you are, standing tall, and it terrifies them. They offer hugs now, but you know they're hollow. They want to be close to you again, but not because they care. It's because they see what you've become, and they realize they're on the outside looking in. The same people who left you to struggle now want to ride your wave of success. But it's too late. They missed their chance. God lifted you out of that dark place, and He gave you everything they couldn't: peace, strength, and a sense of purpose. And now, they don't know what to do. Their fake smiles and shallow words are no match for the power they see in you. They want to act like they've always been by your side. But you see through the lies. You see the Jezebels in your life, those who wear masks to hide their true intentions. They want to take from your light, but they haven't earned the right to stand in it. These people, they didn't believe in you before. They underestimated you because they couldn't see what God was doing in your life. But now, they watch in silence, unsure how to handle the fact that the person they once discarded has risen so far above them. And it's not just your success that bothers them. It's the peace you carry. It's the calm that radiates from within, the joy that comes from knowing that you made it, not because of them, but despite them. Do you remember? They watched you struggling, didn't they? Watched you drown in your own silence, barely holding it together. They saw the pain in your eyes, the way your spirit was dimming, but they didn't care. To them, you were nobody, just someone they used for a while, someone who served a purpose until they didn't need you anymore. And when that time came, they walked away without looking back. No second thoughts, no guilt, just cold indifference. You reached out, hoping for a lifeline, but the silence was deafening. No calls, no messages, no check-ins to see if you were okay. It was like you had never existed in their world. The ones you thought would always be there, the ones you sacrificed for. They forgot about you like you were nothing. Your tears, your sleepless nights, your cries for help. They were invisible to them. You gave so much of yourself, didn't you? You were there for them when they needed someone. You listened when they vented, supported them through their darkest moments, held them up when they couldn't stand on their own. But when it was your turn, when the weight of the world was too much for you to carry alone, they were nowhere to be found. They had gotten what they wanted from you and moved on with their lives, without a second thought. The worst part is how easy it was for them to forget you. While you were drowning, they were out there living, laughing, moving on like you had never meant anything. They didn't even notice the way your calls became less frequent, how your texts grew shorter until they stopped altogether. And even if they did notice, they didn't care. You were no longer useful to them, so why would they bother? Do you remember how it felt? That ache in your chest every time you glanced at your phone, hoping for some sign that they remembered you, that they still cared. But the notifications never came. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and it became painfully clear. You were alone. They had moved on, and you were left to pick up the shattered pieces of your heart. They probably never thought they'd need you again. In their eyes, you were expendable, replaceable. They never imagined you could be someone worth holding on to. To them, you were just a moment in time, a fleeting presence in their lives. You were easy to let go of because they believed they could find someone better, someone more useful, more exciting. And that belief allowed them to forget you without hesitation. As we come to the end of this message, let's take a moment to reflect deeply on something that often gets misunderstood. Being nice isn't the same as being good. Some people wear kindness like a mask, offering smiles and pleasantries when it benefits them, but turning their backs the moment you no longer serve their needs. That's not goodness. That's manipulation. God didn't put us on this earth to only help those who don't need it, to pretend everything is fine while ignoring the suffering around us. He wants us to see the outcasts, the broken, the ones the world forgets. He wants us to be a light for those in darkness, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. The path of true goodness, of righteousness, isn't paved with fake smiles and shallow gestures. It's not about being nice to people who can offer you something in return. No, that's the path of Satan. Satan delights in seeing people play those roles, in watching them support only those who make them look good, who flatter their egos. Satan thrives when people turn their backs on the poor, the lonely, the forgotten, because that's when his darkness creeps in. When we choose convenience over compassion, when we help only when it's easy, we're not walking in God's love. We're following the empty promises of the enemy. But God's love is so much greater than that. He calls us to a higher standard. He calls us to love without condition, to see the humanity in those who the world has cast aside. It's easy to support those who don't need it, but the real test of faith is whether we can stand by the broken, the suffering, the ones who can't give us anything in return. That's where true goodness lies. That's where God's heart is. And for those of us who have been through the fire, who have felt the sting of being left behind, forgotten, or used, God's love surrounds us. He never forgets those who keep their hearts pure, who walk the narrow path, even when the world turns its back. He watches over you, the chosen ones, because he knows your journey. He sees how you've held on to your integrity when it would have been easy to become bitter. He sees how you've stayed humble, even when you could have let pride take over. And he sees how you've never forgotten where you came from, how you've continued to help those who are struggling, even when you've found your own strength. That's the kind of love that pleases God. That's the kind of heart he blesses. Satan wants to see you fail. He wants to see you turn your back on others, just like people once turned their backs on you. He thrives on division, on selfishness, on false kindness. But God, he rejoices every time you reach out to someone in pain, every time you lift someone up without expecting anything in return. And he knows your heart. He knows that you've chosen to walk the path of true goodness, even when it cost you. He knows that you've chosen to keep loving, keep helping, even when the world gave you every reason not to. So, hold on to that love. Don't let the world harden your heart. Don't become like the people who hurt you. Continue to walk in the light, to lift up the broken, to be a beacon of hope for those who need it most. Because that's what God wants for us, to be a reflection of His love on this earth, to be the hands that reach out to the poor, the outcasts, the forgotten. That is the path of goodness, and that is the path He blesses. And when the tables turn, and the world sees the light shining through you, remember this: you are chosen, not just because of where you are now, but because of where you came from and who you've become. God's love has carried you through, and it will continue to do so. Let that love shine through you, and never forget you are loved beyond measure.